to the Texas High School Football Coaches Show on Lone Star Gridiron. I'm Chris Daly, and it's my belief that the men that make up the fraternity of Texas High School football coaches are much more than a bunch of thick-necked guys with whistles. They do so much more than teach technique and the X's and O's of football. They take young boys and change them into young men of character. They get kids to believe in themselves, to trust others, and to put others ahead of themselves. Texas high school football coaches are unique in how they impact the lives of these athletes as well as the generations those kids touch. In this show, I sit down with a different Texas high school football coach each time and learn about them. Not their record, not their on-field accomplishments, but who they are and what they believe, and what it means to be part of the greatest sport in the greatest state. All right, join me in welcoming Coach Bob Wager, currently at Arlington Martin, to the show. Coach, how are you doing?
Terrific, Chris. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, you bet, you bet. Gosh, I got your name from another coach, and that's kind of how this works. At the end of the show, I'm going to ask you if you could recommend another coach to talk to. But in this series, what we're doing is we're talking to coaches, Texas high school football coaches in particular, to get their history. We want to somehow put together a coaching tree and see all the great coaches that work with each other, and then also, more importantly, their philosophy and the things they've learned and what makes Texas high school football so special.
Sounds great.
Cool. Well, let's start. Let's back up and drive back in time a little bit to when you started coaching, whether it was assistant coach, however you started. Give us the blow-by-blow, the stop-by-stop of how you got to where you're at.
I was a college football player at Springfield College in Massachusetts. I actually grew up in upstate New York, Johnstown, New York, and I played a few years of college football and broke my 7th cervical vertebrae in a college football game, and wanted to continue to be around our college football team. Had always had aspirations of being a high school football coach, and I can get into that here in a little bit, but my college football coach, Mike DeLong, allowed me to serve as a volunteer assistant, and my coaching career really began at my college alma mater. Once I completed that was in the early 1990s. The book Friday Night Lights was a bestseller, and I can remember hearing about Texas high school football even as a young boy in Johnstown, New York. I didn't know all the particulars, but I did know that it was something special. And when you're hearing about Texas high school football, even when you live in Johnstown, New York, there's a reason for it. And so Friday Night Lights was really an eye-opening experience for me because I'd always had aspirations of being a high school football coach. My high school football coach was and still is today my hero. And with a goal of becoming a high school football coach, I wanted to do it in a place where football meant a great deal. So in 1992, I sold a rusty old Jeep CJ7 that I knew wasn't going to make the 1,600-mile trip. To be honest with you, I was fortunate when it made it to class. I sold a Jeep. I bought a Suzuki Katana 600 motorcycle. I threw everything that I owned into a gym bag, and I moved to Texas in the summer of 92.
Nice.
From there, I landed at the Texas High School Coaches Association annual coaching school, and fortunately was able to get hired on at Carter Junior High School here in Arlington. I coached football, basketball, and track with 7th graders, and my lunch hour and my conference time were back-to-back. So during that time, I would ride my motorcycle up to San Houston High School, which is the school that Carter Junior High fed into, and really, I racked weights. I picked up towels. I just tried to hang around as much as I could. And Coach Ken Ozy, who was the head coach at San Houston at the time, hired me that spring. And so I began my high school coaching career at Arlington, San Houston. I was a sophomore JV coach my first year there. Then I became the offensive line coach. And then in my final year there, my 4th year, I became the offensive coordinator. This took us to 1997. In 1997, I left St. Houston and became the head coach and athletic coordinator at Class 1A Tolar High School, which is on Highway 377. I stayed there for 4 years. Then I went on to 2A Groveton in Deep East Texas. I was the head football coach and athletic director there as well. I spent 4 great years there and then had an opportunity to go to 3A Kaufman. I really thought that we'd stay in Kaufman for 20 years. My first son had just been born. We loved the community, and we only stayed about 8 months, and that's when I came to Martin. So we don't get to control the timeline. You have to take those opportunities when they present themselves, and I've been at Arlington Martin High School now for a decade.
Wow. Very cool. And you can kind of speak to this. There are great athletes all over the country, but what I've found, since I played Texas high school football and beyond, what I've found is what makes Texas different isn't the athletes, it isn't even the interest in the sport, it's the coaches. And there's something about being a Texas high school football coach, it's kind of a calling, not so much a job, right?
Oh, I agree totally. And there's certainly are great athletes here and everywhere. I think to add to your statement, the athletic period that we have. Every day we have an opportunity to be with our team for 90 minutes. 30 minutes is an academic study hall or leadership training, character training. And then 60 minutes every day of the year, we have an opportunity to get better. And to kind of put that in perspective, when I was playing in New York, I might have a Friday night football game, and during the day I was in a PE class in a bowling section, or maybe playing badminton. And so, when you start to take those days and multiply them together, the Texas high school athlete that's power cleaning 3 times a week is going to be better than the guy in New York who's playing badminton or bowling every day. And so I think that from a structural standpoint gives coaches more tools to be able to better prepare their teams. And in great part, you see a lot of Texas high school football players make an immediate impact at the collegiate level. And a great part of that is because physically they're more developed than athletes in other areas of the country. Now you wrap all those things together, and then to get back to your point, yes, there are tremendous coaches in the state of Texas, and tremendous coaches at every level. I've been embarrassed at the 1A level, the 2A level, the 3A, the 5A, and the 6A. And so it doesn't matter if you're in the piney woods of deep East Texas or small farming communities in West Texas or right here in a large urban area. There are tremendous high school football coaches here in the state. And I think when you look at the game of football, there are some things that trickle down from the NFL to college to high school and then to youth football. But I think there are probably twice as many things that trickle up. Some of the things that you see high school football teams do show up in the college ranks and in the NFL 2 and 3 years down the road. And that's a credit to the coaches and the commitment that people make in the great state of Texas.
Nice. And one thing I've learned from doing the series of interviews with coaches is that nobody does it alone. So talk to me about some of the influential coaches that you've worked for, that you've worked over, you've worked with in your career.
Well, it really starts with my high school football coach, Gary Kaufman. And my father passed away when I was 3. My mother was served as the dual role as mother and father. And I'll never forget the day that I met Coach Kaufman. I was a 3rd grader, and in our small town, they would take us out of physical education classes a couple of weeks a year and drive us to the high school for swimming lessons. And I sat there in the bleachers next to the pool at Johnstown High School and watched this hulk of a man come out and, realized very, very quickly that this was a person that loved life, he loved kids, and he absolutely loved the game of football. And he was one of those people that they make you feel better about yourself just by being around them. and I wanted to be around him as much as I could. And so his role was much more than teaching me how to block and tackle. His influence in my life still has a major impact on how and why I do the things that I do today. And so ultimately, Barry Kaufman was the person that influenced me to be a high school football coach because I wanted to be just like him, and I still do. Now, once my coaching career and playing career continued, certainly Mike DeLong, my head football coach at Springfield College, Coach Ken Ozzie, who was my first head coach here in the great state of Texas, they had major influences on me, not just in the X's and O aspect, but in regards to how you build relationships with kids. And I think that's the most important aspect of this job. But I'll also tell you that through those stops from 1A to 2A to 3A to 5A to 6A, coaches are nomadic, and we move as a pack. And I have half a dozen coaches on my staff right now that have coached with me at those smaller schools. And so when you move, you don't just move as a head coach, you move with your assistants, and that's their families, their wives, their children. And so I've got coaches, fortunately, on our coaching staff that I've been with for 12 and 13 years. And with that comes a tremendous loyalty and a tremendous respect. And some of the very finest coaches that I've ever been around, fortunately, are right here on our coaching staff.
Nice. Nice. You had mentioned that learning how to communicate with kids was one of the most important things you've learned. Can you go into some sort of detail about that, about how important that is in a coach's success?
Well, from a football standpoint, a success standpoint, I think the greatest compliment that you can ever have from an opposing coach is to suggest that your team plays extremely hard. And that's something that we're all trying to accomplish. What I've learned along the way is certainly that requires a lot of hard work, but it also requires a great relationship because in the end, and this is no different between my 10-year-old son and the way I was as a player and what I see out of our players right now. You play for your town and you play for your school, you play for your community, but you also play for your teammates and you play for your coach. And the coaches that I've had along the way, just to use the analogy, I'd run right through a wall for them. I loved them so much, and I loved them because they loved me, right. and they disciplined me, and they gave me the tools that I needed to be successful. And I think that's the real starting point is, even in a situation in a large urban school right now where we have 300 players in our program, it all starts with the one-on-one relationship that you're able to build with those kids. And if your kids know that you care about them well beyond what they do on the football field, they're going to play their tails off for you. And if there's anything that we're banking a career on, it's on our ability to build relationships with kids and make sure that they know that we care about them and we love them and we want them to be successful. And I think as a result, our kids have always played extremely hard for us.
Nice. So let's say you're having a conversation with one of your friends from back in New York, and the subject of Texas high school football comes up. What is the first story or a moment that comes to mind that you would explain to one of your friends about what it means, Texas high school football?
Well, it's really in part the journey. I've had such a blessed journey along the way. I wouldn't trade my time as a junior high coach. I wouldn't trade my time in the small school classifications. I loved every stop that I've had along the way. But from Tolar, Texas to Groveton to Kaufman to here, I've been fortunate to live in communities that when it comes 7:30 on Friday night, everything shuts down. And that's the most important thing that's happening in that community at that time. And aside from the relationships that you build with your teammates and your coaches, which is the utmost important thing, the other is just how communities will rally around a high school football team. And I would go as far as to say that certain communities are defined by the way their high school football team plays. when you're winning, the cafeteria food tastes better. The discipline inside the school building is better. You see people out in the grocery store that have Martin Warrior gear on, and they're excited, and it affects people. And when you don't win, it makes it even more difficult to have a positive environment around your school building. It's a big deal here.
Nice. All right, one last thing. I want to talk about goals. Is your ultimate goal, like, you want to crack G.A. Moore's win total, or what goals do you still have as a high school football coach?
Really twofold. Number one, I want to continue to grow and get better every day at this job. And like you said, it's not really a job. I did this for free. It's something that I absolutely love to do. I wake up in the morning. I'm excited about putting my socks on, and I just want to continue to grow in every phase of my professional career. I think from a major goal statement, one thing that's happened over the course of the 10 years that I've been here at Martin, and I already mentioned half of our coaching staff has gone from the small school classifications to the largest. The other neat thing that's happened is we've got half a dozen coaches on our staff that are former Martin players, and that's something that we start talking to our players about while they're in high school. And our job is to try to have a positive influence on their life, and I don't know that there's a greater profession in the world, or certainly I don't believe that there is. And so now to have an opportunity to mentor not only our players, but coaches that are former players, that's very rewarding as well. And so one of my top priorities is to try to help those coaches accomplish their career goals and their life goals. And that has become a very rewarding aspect of this position as well.
Very nice. Coach Bob Wager, I want to thank you so much for taking the time, sitting down, and sharing your thoughts.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you for your interest.
Hey, coaches, we want to tell your story as well. So get in touch with us, and we'll schedule a time to record your interview so we can add your history, your insight to what we hope will be an amazing collection of wit and wisdom from Texas high school football coaches. Thanks for listening. This show is brought to you by the book, All I Need to Know I Learned from My Texas High School Football Coach, a handbook of wisdom for parents, young people, and yes, even coaches. This book will be available in ebook format on Amazon's Kindle store, iTunes, and wherever electronic books are sold. But you can purchase an advanced copy at a discounted rate by heading over to learnedfromcoach.com. That's learnedfromcoach.com. Thanks again.